Well, it's about a minute after noon, I think, so I can say good afternoon and thank you for joining us today. I'm Karen Merrill, RBH EAP counselor and presenter, and I'll be guiding you today as we explore the issue of seasonal affective disorder. If you're familiar with our trainings, you know that at points along the way, we ask polling questions to help make the training a little more interactive. And hopefully at the end, there'll be time for questions, and we also have a couple of handouts attached to the training that we'll be able to review. Hold on. Okay. So our agenda for today is to define what seasonal affective disorder actually is. How is it different from depression? What are the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder? And what can we do about it? What are the remedies available to us? It's hard not to look at this issue without mentioning the impact of the holidays. You know, we've just kind of passed the whole series of the holidays, and it kind of sets the stage for seasonal affective disorder. Sometimes we experience a post-holiday letdown, all that planning and event attending, and now here we are. There can be a financial hangover after overspending for the holidays, and we can be disappointed sometimes because the holidays don't meet our expectation of what we hoped it would be. And then there's that whole issue of New Year's resolutions and how that's going. A point of interest, you may have read the same article I did that indicated that at the very beginning of this year, 44% of Americans made at least one New Year's resolution. And historically, what we have found is only 8% are successful. So puts the issue of whether or not, it's a good idea to start a New Year's resolution makes any sense. But if you have difficulty in that area, you're certainly not alone. Okay, so as winter presses on, you might find yourself feeling depressed, sluggish, easily annoyed, sleepy, eating or drinking more. You might wonder what's going on. Well, I can tell you it's not in your head, and it's probably not the cold. It's the darkness. It's a phenomena that we call seasonal affective disorder. SAD, or another term is winter depression, is a mood disorder associated with depressive episodes related to seasonal variations of light. Sometimes, for some people, SAD is superimposed on major depression. In other words, depression can be an issue all year long. This is a phenomena that has been researched extensively. There's still a lot of kind of murkiness about it. What we do know, and this tells you how murky it is, that between 1.5 and 9.7 of us are impacted from seasonal affective disorder. And of course, there are varying issues that we'll talk about as well that can impact that. So what is it? And we'll go kind of, we'll be peeling the onion about this as we go on. But winter depression is a syndrome characterized by recurring episodes of depression during mostly the winter months. It can start in late fall, and symptoms can begin to emerge in early October through late November, and it worsens over the winter months and then generally remits in March or April. So that's kind of what we know about that. Now, as we delve further, we're going to present the first polling question. So here we go. Seasonal affective disorder is a recent phenomena and impacts only humans. True or false? So we'll give you a minute to vote, and then we'll ask Brenda to share what you all have come up with.
So it looks like 100% voted false.
That's correct. It is false. Good job. So seasonal affective disorder was actually first noted, long history of this, before 1845. It wasn't officially named until the late 80s, but as sunlight affected the seasonal activities of animals, specifically reproductive cycles and hibernation, there was a thought and a link that SAD may have an effect on seasonal light variations in humans as well. So to kind of relate it to animal behavior, I think about bears, storing up on food, eating everything they can, and then going into their den for the winter to hibernate. So, there's some similarities, certainly, and crossover among animal behavior and human behavior. As we delve in it a little more deeply, so what causes it exactly? As seasons change, it causes a shift in our biological internal clock, or what we call a circadian rhythm, due to the changes in sunlight pattern. This can cause our biological clocks to be out of step with our daily schedules. So if we think about that, our body follows a daily 24-hour circadian rhythm. It is affected based on light and dark cycles. And winter depression, or SAD, results from a decrease in the day length that we experience in winter. The reduction in that daylight actually desynchronizes the body clock, disrupting the rhythm. So if you think, since we generally get up and go to bed at roughly the same time, as this light pattern changes, it causes us to get out of step with what's going on and begin to feel these symptoms. Some of the research has described it as an ongoing jet lag. So it is the short days and the overcast, the darkness, that causes it. And although we don't know why, for some reason, younger people and women are at higher risk. I have a feeling it may be linked in some way to hormonal development and kind of processes, but there isn't any hard data on it. But we do know that younger people and women are more at risk. So to get a little more technical, the cause has to do with melatonin. So, and that's a term that we probably are all familiar with. Melatonin is a sleep-related hormone that's secreted by a pineal gland in our brain, and it's linked to seasonal affective disorder. The hormone, which can cause symptoms of depression, is produced at increased levels of the dark. So then if you follow that line of thinking, when the days are shorter and darker, this production of the hormone increases, and we would be more susceptible to depression. You might notice that when it gets dark or gloomy, we feel sleepy or a little sluggish. That's the result of the increase in melatonin. And melatonin is used for people with sleep issues because it mimics darkness. So it kind of helps us understand this whole phenomena and gives it logic so that we understand what's happening to us. And again, it's not in our head, it's real. Now, certainly, some people are more prone than others. Some people are not affected by seasonal affective disorder, but there's enough of us that are that it's something to address and look at what we might be able to do about it. So before we look at the specific symptoms of depression and seasonal affective disorder, let's test your knowledge and or hunches with the second polling question. So, which of the following is more prevalent in seasonal affective disorder than in depression? Problems with sleep, change in appetite, a heavy or kind of leaden feeling in arms and legs, or a feeling of low energy. So which of these do you think is more specific to seasonal affective disorder than depression? Brenda, what do we got?
So it looks like 59% of participants voted low energy, and 49 problems with sleep, and then another 30% had leaden feelings in arms and legs, and 26% had a change in appetite.
Okay. So it's kind of lots of spread and evenly spread around, and actually the answer is 3, the heavy or leaden feeling in arms and legs. And I'm not sure why that is, but it may just be that kind of, it's, you know, kind of an extension of the sluggishness and feeling weighted down. And again, it is in all likelihood related to the darkness and that melatonin sensitivity. But the one that's different is the feeling heaviness in our arms and legs. So symptoms of depression, and you all have heard this before, but people that suffer from ongoing depression feel depressed most of the day, nearly every day. There can be a feeling of hopelessness and worthlessness, low energy, losing interest in activities that were once enjoyable, certainly problems with sleeping, either too much or sometimes too little, where folks that are depressed can feel some insomnia as well. Experiencing changes in appetite or weight, one way or the other. Sometimes people, when they get depressed, are less hungry or don't want food. They don't want much of anything. You can feel sluggish or agitated, difficulty concentrating, and more prone than seasonal affective disorder are feelings, suicidal ideations, thoughts of death, or suicide is more often with depression. So now seasonal affective disorder. Sleep increases generally because of that darkness, and sleep patterns alter in terms of middle of the night wakefulness and that sort of thing. Not wanting to get out of bed and going in the morning. You know, it can feel dark. It can feel like you just want to stay in bed and probably get deeper into the bed. An overall increased lethargy and fatigue, tired and not a lot of energy, apathy, sadness, or irritability. And this one's interesting. Increased appetite, and what the cravings for are generally starch and sugar. The reason that is because starch and sugar will, at least in the very short term, up the serotonin production. And so, we're very adaptable creatures, and we look for ways of making ourselves feel better. So those cravings are to reduce the depression. And then if there's resultant weight gain because of the increase in these things, and then also the lessening of activity. We're less physically active, we're less productive. I thought this was interesting too. The problems getting along with other people, hypersensitivity to rejection, and then here's that answer to the polling question, a heavy or leaden feeling in the arms and legs. So that looks at kind of the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder crossing over to depression. So how is it different? How is seasonal affective disorder different in other ways? With SAD, the symptoms have occurred in the past 2 years with no non-seasonal depression disorder. So it remits in the spring. Sun comes out, you begin to see spring blooms coming out of the ground, and you feel better. And seasonal episodes outnumber non-seasonal episodes of depression. So, you know, in the short of it, it's seasonally related, not all year long, chemically related. So as we begin to look at the remedies for winter depression or seasonal affective disorder, let's look at this one. Treatments for depression and SAD overlap except for the following: exercise, mindful eating, light therapy, or having a commitment to change. So we'll give you a minute to look at this one.
Okay, so it looks like we have 62% of participants voting for light therapy, 32% voting for commit to change, and then 6% for exercise, and then 5% for mindful eating.
Okay, so those of you who voted for light therapy, that's the winner. Light therapy is definitely the first, and we'll talk about others too, but the first predominant remedy different than depression for seasonal affective disorder. Yeah. So what we call phototherapy or bright light therapy, how it works is that it's shown to suppress the brain's secretion of the melatonin. So again, although there have been no research findings to definitely link it with an antidepressive effect, many people respond to this treatment. If you think about, you know, the way thinking about animals and human behavior crossover, you think about how a cat or dog seeks out a sunny spot that they can choose to stretch and curl up in. You know, we all seek the light. But phototherapy or that bright light therapy is known to suppress the melatonin production. So exposure to the light box in the morning can affect our body's circadian rhythm and resynchronize it and reduce the symptoms of winter depression. So my own experience with this, and I have to say that it's important that this exposure to the light box is in the morning, because that's when we respond to the light. But I had a standing, what was like a standing light box, and I put it next to my treadmill and let that light kind of you know, reflect on me. And if for those of you who have tried this, you know that you're not supposed to look directly at the light. It's supposed to kind of cast that light shadow over you. If you think about what it's like in the summer months when it's bright early and the light coming into the window wakes you up early, that's the concept of using a light box in the morning to suppress the melatonin and increase the serotonin. It really makes sense when you think about it. So the device that's used is really a bank of fluorescent lights on a metal reflector with a shield with a plastic screen over it. So, and then there's also research that for milder symptoms, spending time outdoors during the day or arranging homes or workplaces to receive more sunlight can be helpful. There also, I know there used to be available, you could buy like what was called full spectrum light bulbs, and they could be helpful also. And another study found that an hour's walk in the winter sunlight was as effective as time under the bright artificial light. I think it's key to get this exposure in the morning, and sometimes, particularly when weather conditions are difficult, like certainly it has been in the Northwest, it's hard to do that. So it can give you a remedy that you have some control over. Now, additionally, other things, treatments are consistent with other solutions for depression. And we'll look at several of those. And many of them I'm sure you're already aware of and have been exposed to. Many of them you may may be in your toolbox of things to use as well. So how do we prevent seasonal affective disorder? How do we deal with depression? Working off winter depression, physical activity is a terrific outlet. You can't beat it for bleeding off the toxins, raising the serotonin, talking with somebody we trust. Sometimes when we get depressed, we isolate ourselves, particularly when the weather's bad. And talking with someone that you feel you can unload on, using the EAP, it's what it's there for, or a hotline. Learning to accept what we can't change. So, we know the light's coming. We've already passed winter solstice. Really, there's very little we can do except control how we manage ourselves. Avoid self-medicating with alcohol, nicotine, coffee, food, and drugs. The rebound effect of those things are quite negative and can increase the depression. Getting enough sleep to rest and recharge our batteries. Doing things that we enjoy, taking time out to play. If you have pets, brushing them, petting them, taking care of them, playing with them, walking them, even if the weather's bad, taking them to a indoor mall or places, pet stores, places that allow us to bring our pets. And taking vitamin D. Vitamin D production is related to sunlight. And it's interesting how many medical practitioners today recommend doses of vitamin D. Certainly helps with bones, but it helps with energy and lots of processes. Lots of medical providers actually test our blood for vitamin D level, because it's so important. So other seasonal affective disorder busters. Watching the sugar, again, it's that spike, but it's going to cause a crash. Stocking up on omega-3s, those fish oils or krill oil or any of those ways of getting the oils that we need. Challenging ourselves, and we'll talk a little more about that, but challenging ourselves to getting through this maybe a different way, or looking at it a different way, by taking up a project or volunteering, forcing yourself outside when you can. Maybe there's some winter sports that appeal to you or that you could learn. Wearing bright colors, I'll do that. If I feel really glum and it's dark and gloomy outside, I'll put on red or a bright print because it makes me feel better. And then other people get exposed to it as well. Finding humor in the things around you. There's nothing like a good laugh to make us feel better. I think this next one is important as well, is hanging out with positive friends. This is when we want as much positive energy as we can muster, and we can get that in our environment. Again, giving back or volunteering. Head south. Planning a vacation to a sunny place in the winter can be very helpful. It can give us something to look forward to, enjoy, and then reminisce about. So there have been many a winter that's really helped me get through it by knowing that I get this break. It can be extremely helpful. So more steps, and we're going to be proactive and we're going to give as many suggestions as we can, but the 5 steps to coping with seasonal affective disorder, broken down to commitment, meditation or reflection, diet, exercise, and attitude. First off, commitment. Making the commitment to deal with seasonal affective disorder, shining a positive light on it is the key. If you commit to challenging a situation, you're already halfway there. And once we decide, it can really make a difference. So more and more research, we're all exposed to the fact that meditation is good for us and, for aging and body and everything else. But if you haven't been exposed, then a sample method is to just close your eyes, listen to your breath, quietly repeat one word to yourself, hear yourself without speaking, and listening for 15 minutes or so, and then gradually reawakening. And you're recalibrated after that. I would say for newcomers to the process to work up to the 15 minutes. Start really slow because it can feel uncomfortable at first. And like a lot of new things that we try, we can set ourselves up to fail if we bite off more than we can chew. So diet, okay. Consume more fruits, vegetables, complex carbs, whole grains, drink lots of water. Being in heated environments, which we are in the winter months, is so drying on our skin, on our functions. So it's important to drink a lot of water to replenish that. And drinking water also can lessen cravings as we feel full from the water. Making sure we get enough vitamin A, B, C, and E in foods that we choose or supplements. Consuming less sugar, white processed flour, being mindful of how much alcohol and caffeine we consume because it's dehydrating. Processed foods, we know more and more about how just not good for us they are, and what kind of fats. There are some fats that are really good for our body and others that aren't at all. So, I think sometimes the holidays throw us off because we're exposed to so many goodies, and getting back on track can be a challenge. But the key, I think, really, we're not going to keep ourselves from consuming those things we really like and can't have everything that's good for us. But the key is a balance and taking control. Exercise. We're always going to suggest exercise. Helps the body cope with mental and physical effects on stress. So helps with depression, helps with muscle tension and all those kinds of things. So if you have an exercise plan, stick to it. Try to modify it so that the weather doesn't, throw you off totally. And if you're new to it, setting realistic goals. Again, we can bite off more than we can chew, and then it can end up not being very helpful. But setting small goals that you can see yourself attain is very important. And like our diet, the holiday activities can throw us off. But getting a plan to getting back on track in a modulated way can be helpful. So now, as we look at the last one, the commitment part, or attitude part, sorry. So the last polling question, more important than what I should or ought to do is what I want to do. True or false statement? Brenda?
So it looks like we have 58% voting true and 45% voting false.
Okay, so almost 50-50. The answer to this one is that what's the most important and what's going to get the most effective result is what we want to do. So there's a lot of, we walk around, with a lot of negative and positive self-talk that goes on in our head. And I really feel like if we're mindful when what we hear is what we must do, what we should do, what we ought to do, is that instead, if we can ask ourselves what we want to do, what we're willing to do, and what we'd like to do, we're buying in then. We're not feeling like it's something we have to do. Gives us more control. And those oughts and shoulds and are more judgment kind of words. So kind of being aware of your thinking about these things is important. Challenging yourself to look on the bright side. Is there another way to look at something? If I felt better, would there be another way to look at it? And then you've probably heard about the gratefulness exercise, that if first thing in the morning and last thing at night, you think of 5 things you're grateful for, you find that you think of 5, then you can think of 6 and 7, and writing them down. Writing them down is important. It makes it real. And research tells us this makes us happier people. I'm not sure why, except that we're kind of mapping our brain into looking at what we're grateful for, and we have so much to be grateful for. So that's an important thing. And you can do the gratefulness exercise all year round. You don't have to wait until seasonal affective disorder to do that. So again, solutions vary, but I would say to try to either underscore some of the things you're already doing, or maybe take up something new. Relaxation, yoga, meditation. People respond to aromatherapy. One thing we didn't really talk about was kind of getting in touch or renewing our spirituality, or sticking to that can be really important. If you're feeling the need, then individual or group psychotherapy can be really helpful. And our social support systems. As I said before, oftentimes when the weather's bad and we're sad, then we're more likely to isolate ourselves. And it's important to try to challenge that thinking and get out and be with others. Accepting ourselves for who we are and not trying to be perfect. Even with these remedies and suggestions, we do the best we can and set goals small enough that we can see ourselves attain them. So if you like, for lack of a better word, self-help kinds of information, there's a book been around a long time called Feeling Good by a psychiatrist named David Burns, who really was one of the first to link depression with how we think and the kind of thought patterns that roam around in our head. And it's good stuff, and it remains good stuff. Reading things about what seasonal affective disorder is, the literature can be helpful. Building self-esteem by trying new things. Trying to be mindful of our self-sabotaging thought patterns. learning to say no. You know, we can try to be all things to all people and stretch ourselves way too thin. So, and delegating responsibility when we need to, whether that's inside our family household, in the work situation, in any of those environments. Also kind of being in touch when we're feeling overwhelmed and tired and just needing to step back and getting a breath of fresh air. And know that the light is coming. Know that the days are going to get longer and that we'll get through it. It's can we get through it in a way that we feel better about? So how have we spent our time today? Well, we described seasonal affective disorder, how it's different from depression, what the symptoms are, and we've offered some suggestions on how to intervene. So I would challenge you to a little mini contract and think about the things we talked about and try one of the things we mentioned, that you're going to start doing one of them, even in a small way, stop doing something, whether that's a thought pattern or an activity that hasn't really paid off, and what you would continue to do. So all of those things can be helpful as we move forward. The other thing is to remember that the EAP is available for you. It's available 24 hours a day. You could talk to somebody by phone. You could make an appointment to see someone face-to-face. It's free, it's confidential, it's easy, and it's what it's there for the times when we need some support. So we've actually finished ahead of time and have plenty of time for questions and to take a look at the handout. So what questions might you have for me?
It looks like we have a couple of questions. Let's see. The first one is, if you have an office window, is that enough to prevent SAD?
I think it's helpful. I wouldn't say necessarily that it can prevent it, but I absolutely think you're getting some exposure to the light. And, you know, you might consider how your desk or whatever is, how it's faced next to that light to see if you can enhance the light exposure. But I do think it's helpful, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it would prevent it, but I do think that, you know, how you feel is a guide to that as well.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Sure.
So our next question is, does sunlight or artificial light have to shine directly on your skin and into your eyes to prevent SAD?
I don't think so. I think because, like, the research, when I bought my light boxes, actually, and, you know, the instructions were don't look just at it. You don't face it. Have it kind of, you know, shining on you. So I don't think it has to be direct exposure. I think that it's, if the light kind of, you know, is you're in the light and it's reflecting on you, is good enough.
Okay. Next question. Is there one light box better than another?
I don't think so, because I think that they're all based, you know, again, on the same principle of those, you know, kind of rows of fluorescent lights. I think it depends on how you want to use it. You know, like for me, because I wanted to be able to exercise and get the exposure at the same time, I wanted a standing version. But, you know, for people who do some reading in the morning or whatever, there's some, you know, nice desk models as well. And if you do some internet, you know, research, you can see all the things that are available out there.
Okay. Our next question, if suffering from SAD, will taking melatonin for sleep compound the problem?
I think it's possible. I do. I think you have to be real mindful of how much it is and if it's a slow release. But if you think about it, if the darkness is what's causing the depression, if you get too much of it, it might exacerbate it. I think you're going to know the following morning if you try it. But if you think about, well, if you take it because it mimics the dark, mimics darkness and increases it, and melatonin is a serotonin antagonist, so it decreases the serotonin. So I'd be really mindful of it. I know there's a number of herbal sleep remedies that have varying amounts of melatonin, and I think the best indicator is how you feel. How do you feel the next day? So I wish it were a simple answer, but I think it has the potential to exacerbate the problem. Good question.
Okay, and on to our next question. I have one child who seems to be dramatically affected. Let's see, do you have any tips for children that may be different than adults?
Yeah, I think it's the same. I think they'd be the same. And I think the reason that, if you have more than one child and you have one affected is just illustrates the fact that not everybody's affected and some people are. And we can't really quite nail it down as to why, what the sensitivities are. But I think the remedies are the same in terms of what what adults. Play is probably, activity and play would be good, and maybe conversations around, what they're feeling like and what the phenomenon is like. So, I find it really helpful to understand it, and even kids can find it. It's not there's something wrong with them. It's what's going on, but it doesn't mean that you don't try to do something about it.
So the next question we have is SAD genetic?
I'm not sure. I've read a little bit that said that it can be that if you have a family member, I think it's kind of like the same. There's a discussion that if depression period runs in your family, you're more genetically predisposed, and that may be. There's also, there's theory about people who are raised in sunny climates and then move to climates that are less sunny, and that they're more affected based on, kind of what their early environment was like. But, there may be a genetic predisposition for a variety of different reasons. And I'm certain that as we move forward through the years, we'll learn more and more about this.
Okay. So how much vitamin D should we take each day to combat SAD? And is there a particular supplement you would recommend?
So I think I'm not a doctor, and so I would ask, your medical practitioner. I think it's D3. I think that's the one. And I think, like 2,000 milligrams a day is a dosage that's commonly recommended. I think the best thing is to have your blood tested to see what levels you've got. Some people, for whatever else they're consuming or, kind of what their lifestyle's like, Their levels can be a lot higher than others. And you don't want to take too much, but 2,000 might not be enough either. So I'd talk to a medical person or a naturopath or whoever you see, or even just have a phone call or ask them about that. But I think 2,000 is about. I know that's what I take. Is a rule of thumb. So, yeah.
Okay. So we have one final question.
Okay.
Okay. So what is a good amount of sunlight to expose ourselves to every day to decrease the melatonin and increase vitamin D?
So, like the light box is about 45 minutes to an hour, and I would say that would be at least an hour. If you were to try to replicate the reducing the melatonin, upping the serotonin with light, would be at least an hour outdoors in the sunlight. I would also say that it takes some trial and error, but I think that it would be at least that is what I would think. Anything else?
Yeah, actually, we have one more question that just came in.
Okay.
Okay. Despite the cold, does snow in the environment change SAD compared to other places?
Well, what they say is, if it's the darkness and if it's bright, snow's white, so you're getting more light reflection, and I think there's less SAD because it's lighter. I mean, snow actually, it's bright. If it's dreary and snowy, then probably not. But if it's a bright sunny day with snow on the ground, there's going to be less light deprivation, and so that would cause you to feel better. Yeah. Yeah, I think the challenge there is, having some activity, not being homebound, or, taking advantage of what activities you can as a result of the snow, if that's something that, appeals to you. But I do think that people in cold climates with more snow have less SAD. Yeah.
So it looks like those are all the questions that we have for now.
Okay. So let's look at, you've got a couple of handouts, and I'm just going to open them up so you see what they look like. And one is another quiz that you can do on your own time, about if it's only during the winter and women and teens and hard to diagnose. But it's got some things we talked about, and then it has some things that we didn't also. So I would suggest you take a look at that. And then the other one is on seasonal affective disorder, period, and really talks about the kinds of things we did during the training. But it's a good thing to have as a reference and can be helpful. And I think that the main thing is to be mindful of it and to actively pursue things that inhibit it, the seasonal affective disorder, so you feel better. So if that's it, if there's nothing else, then I'm going to let you go and thank you for attending. I know that lots of people that signed up were challenged to be able to attend today because of weather. So kind of just part and parcel of what we're experiencing right now. But hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you. Bye for now.